2-year-old Mason Turner was playing in his grandmother's backyard when the rotted wooden cover of an old well gave way beneath his tiny feet, plunging him 30 feet down into a narrow shaft barely wider than his small body. His family searched frantically for hours, calling his name through the rural Alabama countryside with no response. But Charlie, the family's elderly golden retriever, refused to leave one spot in the overgrown corner of the yard. For 18 hours, Charlie barked incessantly at what seemed like empty ground, driving the family to distraction until they finally realized that their loyal dog was marking the exact location where Mason had fallen. Charlie's relentless barking would guide the most difficult rescue operation in the county's history and save a toddler who had survived a fall that should have been fatal. Welcome to Saved by Tales. Before we dive into this nail-biting story of a dog's persistence leading to a miracle rescue against impossible odds, tell me in the comments, have you ever had a pet that wouldn't stop barking or behaving strangely in a specific location? And if you believe these incredible stories of animal determination saving lives deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and join our community celebrating the four-legged heroes who never give up when lives are at stake. The Turner family had gathered at Grandma Rose's farmhouse in rural Cullman County, Alabama, for their annual spring reunion. Rose Turner's property had been in the family for 3 generations, sprawling across 40 acres of farmland and woods that held countless childhood memories for the Turner children and grandchildren. 2-year-old Mason Turner was the youngest of the cousins, a curious toddler who delighted in exploring every inch of his great-grandmother's yard under the watchful eyes of his parents David and Jennifer and his devoted companion Charlie. Charlie was a 12-year-old golden retriever who had been with the Turner family since David was a teenager. The old dog moved slower than he used to, but his devotion to the family children had never wavered. He had appointed himself Mason's personal guardian, following the toddler everywhere and gently steering him away from potential dangers. Charlie's like Mason's shadow, Jennifer often told friends. That dog won't let Mason out of his sight for more than a few minutes. Grandma Rose's property had several outbuildings, old farm equipment, and remnants from decades of rural living. Most of the family knew to watch for potential hazards, but with so many relatives visiting and children playing, it was impossible to supervise every moment. The old well has been covered for years, Rose assured the adults as they watched the children play. Daddy sealed it up when I was just a girl. It's been safe all this time. On Saturday afternoon, while the adults prepared for the evening barbecue, Mason wandered toward the back corner of the property where wild honeysuckle and kudzu had overtaken what used to be Grandpa Turner's workshop area. Charlie followed dutifully, though his arthritic joints made it difficult to keep up with an energetic toddler. The old well had been covered with wooden planks decades earlier, but Alabama's humid climate and years of neglect had rotted the wood until it could barely support its own weight, let alone a child's body. Mason was chasing a butterfly through the overgrown vegetation when he stepped onto what appeared to be solid ground. The rotted cover gave way instantly, and the toddler plummeted 30 feet down the narrow shaft of the abandoned well. Charlie, who had been just a few feet behind Mason, immediately rushed to the edge of the hole and began barking with an urgency that the family had never heard before. The old dog's barks echoed across the property, sharp and continuous, but the adults at the house assumed he was just excited about something he'd found in the woods. At the bottom of the well, Mason had landed on a small ledge created by collapsed stones, which likely saved his life by breaking his fall. The shaft was so narrow that his small body was wedged between the stone walls, preventing him from falling further, but also making it impossible for him to climb out. It was nearly an hour before anyone realized Mason was missing. Jennifer had been helping in the kitchen and assumed Mason was playing with his older cousins. David had been setting up tables for dinner and thought Jennifer was watching their son. "Mason?" Jennifer called when she stepped outside to check on him. "Mason, where are you, sweetie?" The initial search was casual. Family members checked the obvious places where a toddler might hide or play. But as minutes passed without finding Mason, the search became more urgent and systematic. "Mason," voices called from every direction as aunts, uncles, and cousins spread out across the property. "Mason, come to Mama." Charlie's barking had continued throughout the search, but the dog was in the overgrown back corner of the property, where most family members rarely ventured. His persistent barking became background noise that the searchers tuned out as they focused on calling Mason's name. "That dog has been barking for over an hour," Grandma Rose mentioned to David as they searched the barn. "Maybe something's got him worked up back there." But David was too focused on finding his son to investigate Charlie's behavior immediately. As afternoon turned to evening, and there was still no sign of Mason, the family called 911. Cullman County Sheriff's deputies arrived within 30 minutes, followed by search and rescue volunteers from across the region. "We need to consider all possibilities," Deputy Sheriff Marcus Webb explained to the desperate family. "Toddlers can hide in very small spaces, or they might wander much farther than parents expect." Search teams spread out beyond the immediate property, checking neighbors' barns, ponds, and outbuildings. The fear was that Mason had wandered into the woods or toward one of the several water features on nearby properties. Throughout the search, Charlie remained in the overgrown corner, barking continuously. The old dog's stamina was remarkable for his age. He should have been exhausted from hours of sustained barking, but his urgency never decreased. Charlie, quiet. Several family members called when his barking interfered with their ability to hear responses to their calls, but Charlie ignored every command, something he had never done in his 12 years with the family. Finally, David's brother Michael decided to investigate what was causing Charlie's persistent behavior. Michael Turner pushed through the thick honeysuckle and kudzu toward Charlie, expecting to find a trapped animal or some other distraction that was keeping the dog agitated. What he found instead changed everything. "Oh my God," Michael shouted when he saw the collapsed well cover and the dark opening in the ground. "David, Jennifer, get over here now." The family rushed toward Michael's voice, arriving to find Charlie positioned directly over the opening, still barking down into the dark shaft. The dog's positioning was precise. He was marking the exact spot where Mason had fallen. David dropped to his knees at the edge of the well and called down into the darkness. "Mason, Mason, can you hear Daddy?" From 30 feet below came a weak but unmistakable response. "Daddy." The sound of their son's voice after hours of terror sent both parents into emotional collapse. Mason was alive, conscious, and responding. Charlie had been trying to tell them where he was for over 6 hours. The well presented extraordinary challenges for rescue teams. The shaft was barely 18 inches wide, too narrow for adult rescuers to descend safely. The depth of 30 feet made it impossible to simply pull Mason up with ropes, and the structural integrity of the old well was questionable after decades of neglect. "This is one of the most difficult rescue scenarios we've encountered," explained Fire Chief Robert Martinez as specialized equipment was brought to the scene. "The child is wedged in a space that's too small for our normal rescue techniques." Charlie never left his post during the rescue preparations. The elderly golden retriever had been barking for over 8 hours, but he maintained his vigil at the well's edge as if understanding that his job wasn't finished until Mason was safely out. Professional well rescue specialists were called in from Birmingham, along with specialized equipment designed for narrow space rescues. The operation would require extreme precision to avoid causing a collapse that could further endanger Mason. As darkness fell, the rescue became even more complicated. Temporary lighting was set up around the well site, and rescue teams worked through the night to develop a safe extraction plan. Mason remained conscious but was showing signs of hypothermia and dehydration. The temperature at the bottom of the well was significantly colder than the surface, and the toddler had been trapped for over 12 hours. "We're going to get you out, buddy," David called down to Mason regularly throughout the night. "Charlie found you, and we're coming to get you." Charlie's barking had finally subsided to occasional whines and whimpers, but he refused to leave his position at the well's edge. Family members brought him water and food, but the devoted dog barely paused his vigil to eat. "Charlie knows Mason is down there," Jennifer said through tears as she watched the dog's unwavering attention to the well. "He's not going to leave until Mason is safe." At dawn on Sunday, after 18 hours trapped in the well, Mason's rescue finally began. A specially designed harness system was lowered into the shaft, operated by rescue specialists who had experience with narrow space extractions. The process was painstakingly slow to avoid injuring Mason or causing structural collapse. Every movement had to be carefully coordinated between surface teams and the specialists monitoring the equipment. Charlie watched every moment of the rescue operation, his tail beginning to wag weakly when the rescue equipment emerged from the well with Mason secured in the harness. "Got him," the rescue coordinator announced, as Mason was lifted clear of the well opening. The crowd of family members, neighbors, and rescue workers erupted in cheers and tears. Mason was conscious, crying for his parents, and reaching immediately for Charlie, who was pressed against the rescue team to get close to his boy. Mason was rushed to Coleman Regional Medical Center for evaluation and treatment. Despite 18 hours in the well, his injuries were remarkably minor, some cuts and bruises from the fall, dehydration, and mild hypothermia, but no broken bones or serious internal injuries. "It's miraculous," said Dr. Sarah Chen, who treated Mason in the emergency room. The way he landed, and the narrow space that held him, probably prevented more serious injuries. And his dog's barking brought help before exposure became life-threatening. Charlie rode in the ambulance with Mason, the first time in the dog's life that he had been separated from the ground. But his devotion to Mason overrode any fear or discomfort. He remained calm and focused on providing comfort to the frightened toddler. At the hospital, Charlie became an unofficial therapy dog, staying beside Mason's bed and providing the comfort that only a beloved pet can offer after traumatic experience. The story of Charlie's 18-hour vigil made national news, highlighting the incredible persistence and loyalty of the elderly golden retriever who had refused to give up on finding his boy. "Charlie saved Mason's life through pure determination," explained Dr. Amanda Foster, an animal behaviorist who studied the rescue. His continued barking wasn't random, it was purposeful communication that he maintained until humans understood his message. The rescue teams credited Charlie with making their job possible. Without the dog's precise marking of the well location, search teams might have spent days looking in the wrong areas while Mason's condition deteriorated. "Dogs like Charlie remind us why these animals have been human companions for thousands of years," said Fire Chief Martinez. His loyalty and intelligence were absolutely crucial to this rescue's success. The Turner family received support from across the country as news of Mason's rescue spread. Charlie became a celebrity, receiving fan mail, treats and toys from admirers who were inspired by his devotion. But the most meaningful recognition came from the Cullman County Sheriff's Department, which presented Charlie with an honorary deputy badge and declared him an official member of their search and rescue team. Charlie demonstrated the kind of persistence and dedication that we hope for in all our rescue personnel, said Sheriff Johnson during the ceremony. He never gave up, and that saved a life. Following Mason's rescue, Grandma Rose had the old well professionally sealed and marked to prevent future accidents. A small memorial plaque was installed near the site, honoring both Mason's survival and Charlie's heroic persistence. That well has been on this property for over 100 years, Rose said during the sealing ceremony. It took something terrible happening for us to realize it was still dangerous. Charlie made sure it can never hurt another child. The Turner family also used the incident to raise awareness about hidden hazards on rural properties and the importance of regularly inspecting old structures that might pose risks to children. Mason's recovery was swift and complete. Within a week, he was back to his normal energetic self, showing no lasting trauma from his ordeal in the well. His bond with Charlie, however, had deepened beyond the normal relationship between a child and pet. Mason understands that Charlie saved him, Jennifer observed as she watched the toddler share his snacks with the patient dog. Even at 2 years old, he knows Charlie is special. Charlie seemed to understand his elevated status in the family as well. The old dog's protective instincts toward Mason became even stronger, and he rarely let the toddler out of his sight during outdoor play. 3 years after the well rescue, Charlie remained Mason's devoted protector, though age had slowed the golden retriever significantly. The story of his 18-hour vigil continued to inspire people and demonstrate the incredible bonds between children and their animal companions. Charlie taught us that love means never giving up, David Turner said during an interview on the anniversary of the rescue. He barked for 18 hours straight because he knew Mason needed help. That kind of dedication is something humans can learn from. Mason, now 5 years old, often told people about how Charlie saved him from the deep hole. Their story had become a family legend that would be passed down for generations. The old golden retriever's heroism had proven that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who refuse to be quiet when everyone else has given up listening. I still think about that spring afternoon when a 2-year-old boy disappeared into the earth through a rotted well cover and an elderly golden retriever began a barking marathon that lasted 18 hours. If the family had forced Charlie to be quiet, if they'd dismissed his persistent barking as confused behavior from an aging dog, Mason Turner might have become another tragic statistic of children lost to hidden dangers. Charlie's story teaches us something profound about the nature of communication and persistence. This old dog didn't have words to explain what he'd witnessed, but he had determination. For 18 straight hours, he refused to give up trying to tell his family that Mason was right there, 30 feet below where they were searching everywhere else. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a pet that wouldn't stop barking or behaving strangely in a specific location? Have you discovered that your animal was trying to tell you something important that you initially dismissed? These persistent behaviors might be more meaningful than we realize. Share your experiences in the comments below, because at Saved by Tales, we believe that our four-legged family members sometimes know things we don't and will exhaust themselves trying to communicate with us. If Charlie's incredible story moved you, if it reminded you to pay attention when animals are trying desperately to tell us something, please share this video with other families who need that reminder. Hit that like button, subscribe to Saved by Tales, and help us continue telling the stories of animals whose persistence and loyalty save lives when humans learn to listen. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most important voices are the ones that refuse to be silenced, even when everyone wishes they would just be quiet.